It's funny how, for about 2 hours, YouTube had frozen the view count on my Colin Flaherty Gematria video at 68. See the numbers that are portrayed here? There is 68 views, there are 42 comments, there are 6 likes and 0 dislikes. If you watch the video, you'll learn that in Gematria, Colin Flaherty sums to 68, and you'll learn that nigger sums to 42 and 60. 6 and 0 is like 60. It might be a coincidence, but it couldn't have been more perfect to see those numbers as stats for that video, that is, dealing with those numbers. This has happened to some of Zach Hubbard's videos as well. On several of his videos, they would freeze the view count on some number that is central to some Gematria scripted story that he's exposing in that video. That's how arrogant they are. Instead of being afraid that we have this Gematria knowledge they concealed for so long, they use it to mock the person exposing it by way of the video stats. But it could also have been a coincidence. But anyway, one has to wonder, is all fiction mind control? People will react to fictional stories with the same emotions they react to real-life stories. This means you can emotionally manipulate people into taking the side you want in certain issues through fictional stories. It really is a form of mind control. For example, you take Life is Strange 2. This teenager accidentally kills a guy in a fight, and a cop just happens to be there by coincidence, and he's about to arrest them, and then the kid's younger brother unleashes some kind of telekinesis that causes an explosion and kills the cop. Seeing that, for example, will make you feel frustrated that superhuman powers don't exist in real life, so that you could kill a cop too. What if a cop comes for me? I want to be able to kill him with telekinesis too, so I can be free. A scene like that in a story can remind you of how impotent you are against the police. It can make you depressed that magic powers don't exist. But what about a regular power like a gun? It then makes you upset that a gun is so hard to obtain, so maybe you could at least hope to shoot the cop dead if you can't create an explosion with your mind. See how your emotions are being manipulated by the story? Or what about this scene with a racist white man? You depict a Mexican teenager having been kidnapped and beaten by a racist white man because the racist white man assumed that the kid is a thief just because he is Mexican. Watching something like that might make you want to defend Mexicans and be ashamed that you are white, if you are white, and stand up to anyone calling for a border wall. On the other hand, a contrasting fictional story could be made where Mexicans are invading white homelands and societies, dispossessing white people, changing their culture, bringing crime, and becoming a burden on the white taxpayer. And then you might get people to emotionally respond to this opposing view instead. How many people will watch a TV show like Breaking Bad and will be rooting for the main characters to evade the law, despite them being murderers and criminals? And after watching that, they'll watch something like CSI and will root for the law enforcement characters to bust some criminals who have killed someone and are cooking meth. Well, wait a minute. If you root for Walter White, then how can you root for the fucking CSI at the same time? Are people simply rooting for whoever is the main character in a story? If a criminal is depicted to have a relatable personality, while the cops do not, and the cops are depicted as adversaries, people will want the criminal to win. Or if the cops are depicted as human and the criminals as one-dimensional, people will want the cops to win. How does that make sense? And what happens if only one tiny group of people in the world controls all your fictional entertainment, so all they do is present one side of the argument in the stories they show you? In Dirk Pitt books, the United States government is always depicted as anxious to keep the American people safe from all sorts of villainy. The government is noble and protective. People have consumed such fairy tales so much that when you tell them that in real life the United States government actually does the sort of things that the villains in Dirk Pitt do against its own citizens, people think you are absolutely nuts. And yet there is evidence of weather warfare attacks scripted by the Gematria Code, evidence of massive wildfires being set in accordance to the Gematria Code, evidence of hoaxes and 9/11 being done by the government, evidence the government is hell-bent on stripping away people's liberties. In real life, the government is a complete opposite of what we're told it is in fiction, especially fiction like Dirk Pitt books. Another example, if you hate the FBI, but you read Agent Pendergast novels, you might start to feel as if hating the FBI is wrong. It might cause you to feel as if the FBI could be a good agency if only they could hire people like Pendergast to work there. And again, that's a deception. You might think that reading a Pendergast novel is so innocent. What possible propaganda could there be? Well, the propaganda is right in your face. They are making you view the FBI in a positive light when it's just another evil alphabet agency, and they do it so subtly you don't realize it. And what I don't get, even if the American government was just like it's depicted in these fictional novels, that version of it still fucking sucks. You don't have your liberties anymore. And why do you want such a powerful fucking police force anyway? Even if it is a noble and virtuous police force, like it is depicted in these books. What if you have to kill to improve your life, or to survive? What if you have to steal to improve your life, or to survive? What about the Harry Potter books? They are propaganda as well. In those stories, the government barges into people's lives, takes their children away because they are special, removes them from their families for 10 months out of the year, puts them in a dreary, dangerous place, and yet the children are shown as happy and excited, and none of them question the tyranny of such a thing. Were those books written to get children and society in general to embrace the idea that the government might take the kids away to an educational institution and lock them up and they won't be able to leave the grounds? Why, your kids are mentally ill. We must take them to a special place where they'll have so much fun while we help them be normal. And it will be accepted because an entire generation was programmed by these fucking books to see no wrong in it. Charles Giuliani is right when he portrays the following example. He said that if movies were still being made where it was shown that it's cool and proper to hate gay people and to bully gay people, the hate for homosexuals would still be strong, and gays would be getting beat up in the streets for being gay. Instead, movies and TV shows for the last 20 years have been pushing the gay agenda and to get us to sympathize with gays. As a result, today you are more likely to get beat up for not being gay. Upon hearing this, someone might stand up and say, I have my willpower. Even if every movie and book out there told me I should beat up gays, I wouldn't do it. I would defend gays. Bullshit. This society is filled with nothing but mindless drones who echo either the Republican news media or the Democrat news media, or take on the mindsets of fictional characters they read about, or imitate celebrities and imitate fictional characters. I am trying to write James Grider novels so I can mind control people as well. Imagine if I could mind control someone into being enraged enough to commit a mass shooting for real, because they identify with the fictional James Grider character and connect with him emotionally, where they relate to the character and they become frustrated they can't have a paranormal power like he does to be able to get away with crime and rebellion, and so they grab a knife and go stab a cop to death with a knife instead. James Grider's rage and depression will become their own, even though he is not a real person. Wouldn't it be nice if I could trigger something like that in people with my fiction? All we get in the mainstream is fiction controlled by the Jews, and that depicts how they want us to see the world as it is convenient to them. What about this scenario? Let's say there are two fictional stories about the same subject. There is my Dance of Death novel that shows how much the main characters suffered due to statutory rape laws, exposing how those laws are retarded. But what if someone else writes a story where, instead of being harmed by statutory rape laws, a teenager's life is saved by those laws? And what if both stories have an equal emotional impact? How do you decide on the policy in real life then? Which position do you take? Do you keep the laws or get rid of the laws? See how important critical thinking is? And even then, all the critical thinking in the world might still be impeded by your emotions. You see how fiction controls your mind? Charles Giuliani said that if you want to change someone's mind, or make an unacceptable idea acceptable, if you want to sway people to your side, write an emotional fictional story. Don't bother with some dry delivery, just a bland statement or a speech about what you want. Instead, write a story that will speak to people's emotions and change their hearts and minds. What's interesting is how we have TV shows, books, and movies now, where the main characters are either criminals or law enforcement, and we root for one or the other depending on the story we are consuming. Are they trying to divide people into two camps, one that is pro-law and thus will cheer on the rising tyranny of a police state, and the second camp being the lawbreakers who, as they see society decay, decide the only way to survive is steal and kill? And the more stealing and killing there is, the more of a police state there will be. Basically just another divide and conquer stratagem among the many that they use. Some stories are about rebelling against a tyrannical government. Other stories are about defending your government to the death. The president's life must be saved. Washington, D.C. must be saved. Those are often the themes in thriller novels. We get these conflicting messages pounded into our heads. In Star Wars, the rebels are heroes. Yet, in some thriller about an FBI agent saving the world or something, the rebels would be portrayed as terrorists. Who is right? Who is wrong? How the waters are muddied. If the only thing regarding security cameras that you could watch on TV was how cameras are fucking up people's lives, it doesn't matter if maybe in reality they don't. And if in those movies and books the people who hang up security cameras are shamed by society, I guarantee people would turn away from using them. Especially if guns were shown to be a far better deterrent to crime. These videos here examine the messages sent by various fictional movies produced by Hollywood, and the effect they had on the minds of those who watched them, especially the baby boomer generation. White people will want Mexicans around if they are fed fictional movies that portray Mexicans as a benefit. White people will want black people around if the fictional movies they watch portray them as a benefit. And that has worked in real life. And now, thanks to the media, we live in a world where people have been made so retarded that they'll watch Breaking Bad or Dexter, they'll root for the main characters to get away with crimes in those shows, and yet they'll praise the police and the FBI at the same time in the real world. They'll watch CSI at the same time, where they'll root for the cops, and they hang up security cameras on their houses, which would make it impossible for someone to get away with living like in Breaking Bad in real life. And they'll complain about how there's less privacy all at the same time, and they'll never notice how all of it conflicts because they've been made so retarded.